Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Updates. Tonight, Danny Miller is going to give us a review of the wonderful Copperhead Strike ride. You know, that ride that kind of won for most anticipated, actually tied for most anticipated
Yes.
this year. We're going to talk about that one. A whole lot of people have already gotten the chance to go down to Carowinds, ride Copperhead Strike. A few hiccups in the first week or so. But those hiccups seem to be, ironed out. Everything seems to be running great with Copperhead.
And I am ironed out?
Get it? Yeah. I'm very curious to see what you had to say about it, because when we were doing the most anticipated show, you were kind of on the fence a little bit. Like, you want to ride it, but you were skeptical about maybe what this was actually going to deliver in terms of
I believe that I had this one on number 2 on my most anticipated list with an asterisk, right?
Yeah.
I said that I put it number 2 because I didn't have full confidence in S&S to build a Smiler type ride with steel curtain. So I had this one at number 2. Behind the RMC going into Wallaby Holland, which we know will be called Untamed, which is a ride that is on the docket for our Europe trip coming up in August, which is why I had it on that list. Copperhead Strike may be, I think, generally the one that most people are looking forward to here in the States. And we went down last weekend with the Coaster crew to check it out. Had a nice little event there. Saturday morning had actually some thunderstorms, some bad thunderstorms going through the area Friday into Saturday morning. So had a couple hours, standing under cover by the lockers while the storms passed before we actually got to ride it. First ride in the pouring rain, we elected to go in the middle of the train so as to get pelted by maybe a few less raindrops. And also, you and I had talked about how, maybe with some of the hang time in the inversions, maybe the middle of the train was going to be a pretty good spot. And it was a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
The skies cleared up after that first ride, and we waited about 15, 20 minutes again and went up and rode in the front seat. We rode 7 times over the course of Saturday and a little bit on Sunday, which is a pretty good number for a brand new ride. The threat of storms all weekend really kept the crowds down. So we got to ride it quite a bit with very little waiting, and in pretty decent weather conditions. It was nice, 70 degrees or so, cloudy, but 70 degrees most of the weekend, which was nice. You and I talked about how this ride needed to be a little bit different in terms of the dynamics and the forces that were exerted on the riders in order to stand out. Because in terms of just looking at the layout, this ride looks kind of like nothing special. It's got some loops, it's got a corkscrew, has some hills, some turns, a lot of turns. And really needed to do something to make it stand out. And we thought that the hang time and a few of the inversions might be what made it from just a good ride to a great ride. I am happy to report that I do think that this borders much closer to the end of the great ride as opposed to just a good ride. We had been comparing it, or I guess we had been speculating how it would compare to rides such as Time Traveler and Monster and Cannibal. And initially we had said that based on what we had seen, it may not be quite as good as those rides. It's not quite as large as those rides, maybe not quite as unique as some of those rides. And I am happy to report that I actually think it is slightly better than all 3 of those rides. I actually rank Copperhead Strike currently just above Monster, which is just above Time Traveler, which is just above Cannibal. So it is in that class of ride, I think. Now, we're with lots of people that we know, that we've gone to many other events with, and it seemed a pretty even split in terms of Copperhead Strike or Time Traveler. And the discussion seemed to be, I like Time Traveler better because it's more unique. Or I like Copperhead Strike better because it's a bit more intense and it's a bit more aggressive. I think either of those statements would be valid arguments. Time Traveler is the more unique ride. It has a more unique setting, maybe a bit more of a non-standard layout with the 90-degree vertical drop at the station, and the spinning cars obviously adds an unpredictability factor that Copperhead Strike really does not have. So Time Traveler, absolutely the more unique ride. Time Traveler is rather large, and the elements are more drawn out and a bit more exaggerated, I guess, if you will, because it is larger, because you have the spinning in order to make sure the forces are not too intense. They does have larger elements. Copperhead Strike is very compact, very tight is the word
Well,
I use.
and that was the thing that you said was most surprising to you, was that the plot of land that they actually put this on was a lot smaller than you kind of expected it to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, the plot of land that Copperhead Strike is on really kind of makes Maverick look very spread out.
Yeah.
And Maverick is not a very spread out ride when you think about it. I would say if you've been to Adventureland and have ridden Monster, the plot of land is much closer to the size of the plot of land that Monster sits on as opposed to the size of the plot of land that Maverick sits on. Copperhead Strike is very compact and kind of goes within itself, which we saw on our behind-the-scenes tour in particular. The first half of the ride and the second half of the ride are very much intertwined, except for where those big inversions are, the two vertical loops and that top hat stall, if you will. I will say the two launches are probably the two weakest parts of the ride, and we had thought that may be the case. We have heard that the launches on the Mack rides are not necessarily the most powerful. Time Traveler sort of reiterated that. I think the launches on Time Traveler are arguably the two weakest points of that ride, and it's everything else that makes Time Traveler a great ride. Yeah. I would say the same thing about Copperhead Strike. It is everything else that makes Copperhead Strike a great roller coaster. I had heard some people say, well, I wish that first launch had about 5 miles per hour more. I get it. However, you get some very nice hang time in that first vertical loop, and if you added 5 miles per hour, you probably would not get that. That first loop has a lot of really good hang time, front to back. On the train, you can sit anywhere, and you're getting 2 to 3 seconds of hang time, which is very nice. You come out of it immediately into that small bunny hill, which has some great ejector air time. The corkscrew is quite forceful in a lateral sense, which I was not expecting. A lot of corkscrews, and a lot of corkscrews are sort of just there, and it's sort of just like a spin, and maybe some of them have good positive Gs, but this one has some really good lateral forces to it, which I was not necessarily expecting. A lot of the turns are taken with a good amount of speed for how small they are, and they do have some good amount of force to them. There are a few really nice transitions that give you Maverick Sidewinder turns at the beginning of the ride. There's a few moments similar to that. And I-305 has some similar transitions, maybe not quite on the speed scale as I-305 or Maverick, but certainly the same sort of feel to it. The second launch is maybe a little underwhelming. You're going from about 35 miles per hour to your top speed, which is a little over 50 miles per hour, so you're not really gaining a whole lot of speed. A little bit of floater airtime over that launch hill, which is nice. A little bit of floater airtime into the double up. Good hang time in the top hat there. Then there's a low to the ground turn, which is quite intense, and then you go right into that second loop. And the second loop is rather intense on the positive G-force side. Not a whole lot of hang time in that second loop, but I think that's okay because this ride has two vertical loops that are very, very different. The first vertical loop has a lot of hang time. It's taken very slowly, and the second vertical loop is taken at a much higher tempo and is much more intense, which I think is very good. The surprise element for me right after that second loop, this Stengel dive type thing where you sort of crest an airtime hill and you're banking to the side as you get to the crest, not too dissimilar from the RMC wave turn elements. but instead of being flat on the other side, it kind of dips down and turns to the right. And then immediately after that, you have a nice transition, which has some of that Maverick I-305 thrower airtime, as some people call it. A nice bunny hop at the end of the ride, some good transitions. There really isn't a whole lot of dead space on this ride, which surprised me as well. We had kind of looked at it and said, well, some of those turns kind of might be a little ho-hum. Most of the turns do have some good amount of force to them, and even though you're not going at an incredibly high rate of speed, the small size of the turns and, again, the tightness of the layout allows it to feel somewhat forceful. And it's much like Monster. It's not so much the speed that's good, it's the pacing. And I think the pacing is very solid on this ride. So I would say overall, exceeded expectations, which is a good thing. And then you start talking about the context of Carowinds in itself. And where does it rank on the Carowinds roller coaster list? It's not better than Fury 325. I don't think anyone thought it would be. No. Depending on what you think of Intimidator and Afterburn, if you told me Copperhead Strike was your second favorite ride at the park, okay. I wouldn't necessarily argue with you on that. I like Intimidator and Afterburn a bit more. I have Copperhead Strike in the number 35 range, and I have Afterburn and Intimidator in like the 25 to 35 range. So those three are kind of in a cluster, very close to one another, and it's kind of, well, do you like the airtime and the big drops and the speed, or do you like the positive G's and the intensity and the inversions, or do you like the compact aggression sort of thing? I would think you're not a big Afterburn fan. I would think that you would like Copperhead Strike more than Afterburn. Now, I don't know what you like. I don't know what you like in terms of Intimidator and how you like Intimidator, but I personally would expect that you would think this is the third best ride at that park.
Well, and it's interesting because I'm just listening to the rides that you're putting in the same class of, and Time Traveler and Monster, I currently have both of those rides over Intimidator. So, like, but see, Time Traveler I like because of the spinning aspect. That I if you were to take the spinning aspect off of Time Traveler, I just think it's another, it's a good ride. It's a filler ride in my opinion. But it's right. The spinning that gives you that unique perspective on so many of those elements that I think sets it apart from other coasters. That being said, I still love Monster, and Monster is a straight up coaster. And if this thing does similar things to Monster and maybe does a few things better, maybe a few things worse, and you average it out, and it's much like Monster, then I think it could very well be my second best ride in the park.
I mean, here's the thing. I think this ride is in many ways a combination of other rides. And I'm watching my screen here. I apologize for my face changing colors because I have overtime of the hockey game on the Sharks and the Golden Knights. So my face is changing colors because I have the hockey game on here. But it's really a combination of a few different rides. It's got the comfort of sitting in the Time Traveler trains, or if you've been on Mantout at SeaWorld San Diego, it's those trains. So it's got the comfort and the re-rideability of a ride such as those. It's got bits and pieces of Maverick in it. It's not intense all the way through like Maverick is. I'm not going to try and convince you that this ride is as good as Maverick because it's not, but it has glimpses of Maverick. It has a few transitions where that kind of feels like Maverick. And the corkscrew, to a point, kind of feels like Maverick. The launches are not as intense as Maverick's launch, and I will never try and convince anyone that it is. In particular, the parts that remind me of Maverick are two of those transition turns where you get some of the thrower airtime, the corkscrew a little bit, and also the airtime hill after the first loop is very much like Maverick's first airtime hill after the Sidewinder turns. So there's two or three parts that I think do Maverick type things very well. And then it's got two or three spots where it does a lot of things like Monster. The the Top Gun, top hat stall thing, the first vertical loop, and the JoJo roll, obviously at the very beginning of the ride. Very good hang time, a lot of fun, falling out of your seat, lap bars only, which is really nice. So you've got a couple of spots where it feels like you're on Monster, a couple of spots where you feel like you're on Maverick, and the whole time you're in a comfortable seat as if you're on Time Traveler. So it's I feel like it marries some of the good parts of each of those three rides and still in some way manages to be a little bit different. And maybe you can even throw in a little bit of Mystic Timbers there, with the launch shed and a little bit of theming going on there, which is kind of nice. So I think it marries a lot of good things about a lot of different rides that we like to talk about here on this show. And I think when you think of it that way, you come away having an experience that's a little bit different than any other ride you've had, but it does enough good things that other good rides do that make you say, yeah, this is a great ride. And I think that's what it is. It's a good addition. It fills a hole that Carowinds needed to fill in terms of not having a launch coaster. So I think it really fills that void nicely. It fits into that part of the park well. They did a good job of making it seem like it's been there a while. So I really like that. They do have a nice amount of light theming. The shed is nicely done. The station and the queue walking up to the station is nicely done. Very similar to the way that Mystic Timbers and Twisted Timbers have been done. Very similar to that. Nicely done, not over the top, lightly themed, but nicely themed. The ride sign is really nice. Obviously, the logo is great. All that good stuff that we've talked about. Overall, I think very well done, exceeded expectations. Very, very happy with Copperhead Strike.
How was the merchandise?
The merchandise isn't too bad. They have a couple of different T-shirt options. They don't have, at least when I was there, they didn't have anything just with the logo plastered on it on the front. They do have the one that I got. It's a moonshine jar with, like, inside the moonshine jar you could see the ride, like it was a photo of the ride that has the logo on the moonshine jar, which is kind of cool. They had that in a couple different colors. They had some more simple ones where it was like the silhouette of the layout with Copperhead Strike written in generic text across on a bar. They do have two-tone gradient polo shirts, which I got one, which it was black and red gradient, similar to the shirt I'm wearing here with like a pattern on it all the way through. And then the logo was embroidered in white, which is really nice, so it sticks out nice. They have some lanyards, magnets, a couple of hats.
Stuffed animals?
No coffee mugs. I do believe they had some snake stuffed animals.
No coffee mugs?
No coffee mugs anywhere. No coffee mugs anywhere. They had the tumblers. They had like a copper-colored travel mug, but no ceramic coffee mugs, which I was looking forward to because I've become quite the mug collector the last year or two. And so I was disappointed that there were no mugs anywhere in the park.
What, Twisted Timbers pricing or standard Cedar Fair pricing?
So the polo I got, it was not a Nike one, so it wasn't like the $75. It was dry fit though, so I think it was $50 range. And most of the t-shirts were 17 to 22. The one I got, I think
under Cedar Fair pricing.
Yes. I think the one with the bar with Copperhead Strike and the silhouette, I think was $21.99. The one I got, I think was $18.99.
Well, the Twisted Timber stuff was pushing $27, $28.
No, I didn't see anything quite that much. I did see one that was $17.99 as well. So with your Platinum Pass discount, you're looking at
not bad at all.
$15-$16 for the lower end ones and maybe about $20 for the more expensive ones, and the polos probably around $44 or $45.
That's a steal.
So the Fury sublimated shirts that they have there are still like the 32s, but that's what those typically have always been. But the cotton t-shirts for Copperhead Strike, you're looking between $17 and $22, which is not too bad. And I got a lanyard for my my new car keys.
So that's pretty cool. Overall, I think that's good to hear. I'm not sure if I'm going to get down to Carowinds this year, to be completely honest with you. it's a hit or miss thing right now. But it sounds like this ride has gone a little bit beyond what you were hoping for. I don't even want to talk about the price tag on it because that's a completely different discussion where.
Well, and we did get some insight onto that, but maybe we'll leave that for another show.
Yeah. So, that's good that this trip, that turned out well for you and that you had a good time. So, we will keep you updated, and hopefully, we're going to see some more ride openings here very soon, to see what we think of those. Steel Curtain obviously opening up soon. Max Force, getting some great pictures in from Great America with the opening weekend this weekend. Some concerning pictures out of Max Force as well.
Yeah.
Looks like one of our friends just sent me a picture of it. Looks like there might be brake fins right on the first hill. So always exciting.
Well, that's always good, especially considering that they seem to have had to deconstruct part of Steel Curtain already as well. So SNS seems to be batting 1,000 here. Meanwhile, Mock Rides has opened a great ride, and it's been running for close to a month now. So
the second week got a little dicey.
Yeah, that's fine. But I would rate if you were on the fence about going to Carowinds this year to go ride Copperhead Strike, I would say plan the trip and go down and ride it. It is a great ride, and when you're down there, you got Fury, Intimidator, and Afterburn as well. Yeah. So always an excuse to go, especially Fury. So, but if you're on the fence, I would say go give it a shot this year. It's worth it.
So as always, I'm Andy Robarchek from Chicago, Illinois.
And Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, Ride Warriors.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.